Hey everybody, welcome to Amity Tracks. In this episode, once again, we will go back into the mists of time. Editor. Let's try that again. We will go back into the mists of time, back to 1966, where I will be counting down the top 10 records, in my view, that were released in that year. So what's going on in 1966? There's a lot. Lyndon B. Johnson is still your president. The Flintstones airs its series finale. Leonid Brezhnev takes over in the Soviet Union. And The Sound of Music wins Best Picture at the Oscars that year. Pirate radio starts broadcasting off the coast of England. And The Nightmare of Parents Everywhere. It's a Small World. The ride opens up at Disneyland. Now, the National Organization for Women is founded in 1966. And Bob Dylan has his mythical Did It Happen, Did It Not, How Serious Was It? Motorcycle accident that many feel kind of changed the trajectory of his career. Unfortunately, reminding us that school shootings are not a new phenomenon. Charles Whitman opens fire from the tower at the University of Texas. Star Trek premieres on television. The Black Panther Party is founded. And finally, How the Grinch Stole Christmas premieres on television, narrated by the immortal Boris Karloff. All right, let's get to the music. So, as before, I do have some honorable mentions. 1966, we're getting into some packed years here in the late 60s as far as great releases go. So some honorable mentions, the ones that, we're fighting for that 11 spot. Let's go with Paul Revere and the Raiders, Midnight Ride. Super underrated band. These guys are great. It's a great kind of pop rock, garagey sometimes band. This is my favorite record of theirs. I actually have quite a few of their records. I don't know why they weren't bigger. Maybe it was their goofy outfits, or I don't know. Anyway, it's good stuff. Good rock and roll. I recently did a video on The Who, so we don't need to talk about this that much, but their second record, A Quick One, is released in 1966. The debut of one of my very favorite bands, but they would get better, the Buffalo Springfield, which introduces the world to one Neil Young, Stephen Stills, and Richie Fury, which I'm not sure which one Richie is. Maybe that's Richie. No, I don't think that's Richie. Anyway, it's Stills and that's Young, and Richie Fury is one of these other guys. All right, I mean, pioneering debut actually, but they would do better. They would do better, or they will do better. How about, and I mentioned this in one of my previous videos, but it's still really important and worth mentioning, what many consider the very first double album ever in rock and roll, Bob Dylan's Blonde on Blonde, right? And quick on its heels, I believe this was released right after, making it one of the, I think, the second major double album in rock and roll history is Frank Zappa and the Mothers of Invention, or though this one was just credited to Mothers of Invention, Freak Out. I've gotten into this recently. I need to get this on vinyl. I've gotten into that recently. It's pretty awesome. The Rolling Stones put out what many consider one of their classics, Aftermath. I'm not quite as high on this as a lot of people are, although I love the Stones, but we can discuss that in a Stones video. And then finally, the debut from Jefferson Airplane. So Jefferson Airplane takes off. This is a fine debut, by the way. I really like this record. I think this is pretty awesome. Although they probably, they make some better ones coming up here soon, but this is a really good debut. All right, top 10. Here we go. We're going to start with the duo Simon and Garfunkel. Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme. I don't know what I need to say about Simon and Garfunkel. I mean, this one really has just gorgeous, gorgeous, Scarborough Fair's on here, Homeward Bound, the 59th Street Bridge song, For Emily, Whenever I May Find Her. It's pretty awesome. And you don't usually associate protest music with Simon and Garfunkel, but 7 O'Clock News, Silent Night as a closer, the Silent Night over news reports from Vietnam. It's actually pretty powerful. Where it doesn't bludgeon you over the head, but it's still really, really good. Number 9, a guy that I think is underrated, although he definitely has a lot of fans. Bob Dylan was interested in him. Right? I want to meet Donovan. Who's Donovan? Sunshine Superman, one of Donovan's great records. Donovan was, I guess he's still around actually, but really creative guy. I mean, great folk music, really great kind of 60s pop, kind of psychedelic stuff. Really, really good. This is one of his better known records. Sunshine Superman's on there. The Trip is cool. Guinevere, but of course, Season of the Witch, which I think is one of the great singles from the '60s. Love that song. Donovan's pretty awesome. All right, where are we at? Number 8. We have the debut from one of the great power trios of all time, one of the first power trios, Cream with Fresh Cream. Now, I am not one who really denigrates Eric Clapton. I know, there's a lot of people kind of, I don't know. There's been decades-long backlash against Eric Clapton. I recognize him as one of the greats, although I do feel like he's been very lazy for the last 30 years or so. But in his prime, one of the greats. That being said, I think Eric Clapton may have been the third most talented guy in this band. I mean, Ginger Baker, Jack Bruce, just amazing musicianship. All right, excuse me. Next, at number 7, a pretty revolutionary record. This record is fantastic, but I mean, the whole thing's really good. But honestly, it's on this list for one song that really broke ground and broke barriers. Some consider the first real jam song in rock history. I don't know. I'm talking about the Paul Butterfield Blues Band with East West, the title track East West. An incredible 10-minute just tour de force. The guitar solo and the guitar playing from Michael Bloomfield on that track is just, to me, is just jaw-dropping. I mean, really taking the title to heart, kind of playing these Eastern scales. And it was 1966. It's still very new to kind of incorporate world music, into kind of traditional, Western music structures. This whole thing is awesome. But man, that title track just blows you away. All right. Number 6. These guys were busy this year because this is the second album in my top 10 from these guys. But I'm going with Simon and Garfunkel again with Sounds of Silence. This one, I know a lot of people kind of look at some of their other records a little more fondly, but man, this just has, to me, just kind of has this cohesion to it. That whereas some of the other Simon and Garfunkel records, as great as they are, do to me sound just kind of collections of songs. This one, for whatever reason, to me just plays through kind of as a cohesive whole. And I do love that title track. Yeah, and I'll do a Simon and Garfunkel video at some point soon, so we can get into more detail on some of the stories behind these songs, which are pretty good, actually. All right, number 5. I mean, absolute stunner. What many believe to be one of the greatest records of all time. I was late to this record. Yeah, I think I mentioned this in one of my earlier videos. For the longest time, I would have put this on, albums that I'm supposed to love that I don't. But I don't know. In the last year or so, it clicked with me, and I got it. Like light bulbs. You know, that's, of course, the Beach Boys' Pet Sounds. You know, Brian Wilson's masterpiece, right? Um, I think it was Paul McCartney, like, once said that God Only Knows is like the greatest song he ever heard. Maybe. It's up there. God, this whole thing is just great. I just wasn't made for these times, man. That is so achingly gorgeous. Even the kind of, what seemed like sort of the throwaway instrumentals. There's a couple instrumentals are great. I mean, just this whole thing. We can talk Beach Boys later too. All right, getting down to number 4. Number 4 is a band from my home state of Texas, actually from my hometown of Houston. Although they are more associated with Austin, because that's kind of where they were when they really broke through. But they did a lot of recording in Houston early on. One of the great psychedelic bands ever. I'm talking about the 13th Floor Elevators, with their debut, The Psychedelic Sounds of the 13th Floor Elevators. Um, Man, check this out if you do not have it. It's one of those records that was kind of, it's lo-fi, it's like recorded kind of murky, but that totally adds to the ambiance. The just otherworldly wail of Rocky Erickson. His, the opener, "You're Gonna Miss Me," is probably their best known song, and just, man, that guy had a rock and roll voice. But that he wasn't it though. Tommy Hall's electric jug. It's like throughout this whole thing is crazy. Stacey Sutherland, really underrated guitar player. This stuff is great. This and then their follow-up, their next one, just brilliant records. Brilliant records. Their follow-up, Easter Everywhere, which will be mentioned on, I think it's the next. I think it's 67 when that came out, so probably be on that list. All right, top 3. These 3 are just monumental, huge records in the history of our music. I think I've mentioned probably 10 times already, throughout previous videos. I'm a big fan of the Byrds. Okay, so the Byrds' Fifth Dimension. I mean, it's hard to explain how great this record is. I mean, it's psychedelic, it's folk rock. There's Eastern elements in there, even some jazz elements. I mean, it's just everything, man. 5D, Mr. Spaceman, What's Happening? Question mark, exclamation, question mark, exclamation. John Riley, it's a gorgeous rendition of John Riley. I mean, really shows off those amazing harmonies with Roger McGuinn and David Crosby. Gene Clark, he left early in these recording sessions, so honestly, I'm not sure exactly which songs. I don't even know if it's totally known which songs Gene Clark participated in before he left. But we do know that he was pretty instrumental in writing 8 Miles High, which, in my view, that's my favorite single of the 1960s. I think 8 Miles High is genius. It's brilliant. We can get a lot more into that when I will do a Byrds video. But man, Gene Clark definitely left them with a doozy. Oh, forgot I had this on this red vinyl. Not that means anything really. Anyway, Fifth Dimension. All right, number 2 for one of my all-time favorite bands. It's going to have to be an epic video eventually on these guys because they got a long, large discography. But this is one of their very best records. I think toe-to-toe with the Beatles as far as like 60s pop. To be honest with you, I actually like this band more than the Beatles. The Kinks, Face to Face. This is their first great record. Now, they had already put out about 3 records and a bunch of singles the singles are really, really important that came before this. To be honest with you, their first three records I think are pretty spotty. I mean, there's classics on there, but then there's a lot of throwaways. This record, their fourth record. It's their first record that really is great, that reaches greatness all the way through. Where Ray Davis is writing, where he shows he's one of the great songwriters in rock history. This is just a perfect pop record, man. I mean, God, his writing is so good. I mean, he's already doing these great observations of English life that he's so, so well known for in this mid to late '60s era. This whole string of records that starts with this one that's so great. Yeah, well, what I like about this one, which honestly I think you get more on this than most Kinks records, is it's a lot of variety. A lot of as great as some of the Kinks records are, there is some sameness on some of these records as far as like the sound. This really has a lot of variety. I mean, from Party Line, Dandy. God, this is so great. Holiday in Waikiki is so awesome. Sunny Afternoon, one of the great singles of the '60s. Yeah, well, we can talk more about that when we get to the Kinks video. I mean, it's just the middle class boredom, in Sunny Afternoon. Although, even more than Sunny Afternoon, though, my favorite song on here, Too Much on My Mind. That's one of those Kinks gems that fans know about, but it wasn't a hit or anything, so casual listeners might not be familiar with that song. Acquaint yourself with that song. It is so beautiful. Too Much on My Mind. God, it's good. All right. Most any other year, something like Face to Face would be number one, but well, you know what's left. I haven't mentioned it yet. This has to be number one. Revolver, the Beatles. Not a surprise, but I mean, it is what it is, right? This is from that great middle period, sort of after Beatles mania, but kind of pre-Sgt. Pepper, which I love. There's really Rubber Soul in this. These two records. George Harrison actually said, in some ways, Rubber Soul and Revolver should be kind of considered. He considers it like a double album, like they kind of belong together. It'd be a hell of a double album. God, I mean, they all contribute here pretty well, but John Lennon, with I'm Only Sleeping, She Said, and Your Bird Can Sing, Dr. Robert, and of course Tomorrow Never Knows, just a groundbreaking psychedelic song. But as great as John Lennon is on here, I think this is Paul McCartney's tour de force. I mean, Eleanor Rigby, and For No One, those kind of beautiful sort of Baroque pop that McCartney was experimenting with. But then there's Here, There, and Everywhere. I mean, just exuberant. Good Day Sunshine is just a great pop song. I mean, just brilliant pop song. Got to Get You Into My Life. I mean, McCartney his songcraft on here is just unparalleled. Anyway, Revolver. Well, all right, guys. That is my run through of 1966. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're enjoying this content. Like the videos. You can hit the bell for notifications whenever we put up new videos. It's the subscriptions and it's the likes that really kind of gets us in the mix with the algorithm, on YouTube. So it gets our videos out to more people, and that's what we want to do. So hope you enjoy it. See you next time.